So, this one's going to be about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And I guess it is a really important topic and also a really helpful topic for some people as well. I at least hope. But as always, more after the intro. Boom. And I'm pretty pumped. I'm pretty pumped, even though, like, I just before was thinking about whether or how long, it's going to take until everything pops a little bit. Oh, I do just hear myself, which is the funny part. I do just hear myself that the audio isn't on top of its game or something. I don't fucking know. Because I'm not having my anti-echo blankets here, which truly are an important part of having good audio, at least for me. I do just need those blankets because there's a lot of echo in my room, especially bouncing off of the table, which is something that's not really good because you can hear it, and I can hear it myself when I'm talking. Therefore, it's probably going to be way more present in the recording, because most often, because I'm living actually next to a street, when there is some car driving by, I do not really hear it. It is something that I don't hear, just because I'm used to it and whatnot. But if I'm recording it when I'm recording, then I'm really hearing it. And it is just such a present thing, such a present sound that it is really disturbing. And I guess it just really makes it better when I'm having my blankets and whatnot, even though like quality isn't such an important factor, If I'm not good, or when I'm not good at my craft, then I'm still not going to be good at my craft if I'm having the best equipment. Therefore, everything is fine. But yeah, before I'm even going to start with the cognitive behavior therapy or behavioral, is it behavioral or behavior? Yeah, it's behavioral therapy or CBT. I do just really have to say that this particular episode, as I'm always saying, and I'm so sorry for all those people that might have been listening to the last podcast as well, because I'm basically always saying the exact same shit. But if you're new to the podcast and or to the YouTube channel, especially if you're not having the time to going through a 30-minute or maybe even 40 or 50-minute episode, then please consider going down into the description and checking out the podcast link, which is the link to the podcast, kind of obviously. And it leads you to the podcast, which is an audio-only version of this medium and or of this particular video, which means that you can just listen to it, which means that it is a way more efficient way to consume this particular episode than it is to just sit here and watch it, because if you're listening to it, you could also just go for a run, you could be working out, you could be doing just so many different things. But if you're sitting here, and if you're watching me, then it's not really that efficient, compared to the other thing. And it is also a little bit more efficient and or better for your cellular data and or mobile data if you are on the go at this point in time. But yeah, we are talking about the cognitive behavioral therapy. I've chosen to talk about this just because I've seen and I've also heard, especially, that it is actually one of the most efficient things in psychology and or most efficient ways of treating different psychological pains, I would say, right now. And I was, just because of that, I was really interested in it to see what it is doing and why it is actually the most efficient one and the best one and whatnot. And also Seth Godin was talking about it. Also Seth Godin had, I think, 2 sessions of CBD, and then everything was fine again. Which is pretty interesting because they also say that it is usually a method that goes pretty quick, and that heals people relatively quickly compared to other treatment methods, which is, a win-win. It is fast for you as a patient and or as a client, and it is also fast for you as a practitioner and or somebody that just heals other people. It is just win-win. It's just amazing. It is just super duper well. And therefore, I was just really interested in what it is doing, what it is actually all about. Even though I do just have to say, after reading all the shit and after reading all the whole article there, or not the whole one, but a relatively big part of it, cognitive behavioral therapy just, the name itself just says a lot. But yeah, I'm starting to read, so please lean back, sit back, and enjoy the read, enjoy the episode. Especially if you're on the podcast, because then you only can hear me. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is a form of talking therapy which is something that I didn't know, which can be used to treat people with a wide range of mental health problems. CBT is based on the idea that how we think, which is the cognition, how we feel, our emotions, and how we act, the behavior, all interact together. Specifically, our thoughts determine our feelings and our behavior. This was actually also one of the key kind of sentences, because this just really reminded me on Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins often is saying that, and other people, just actually everyone in the self-development or self-help or self-improvement space is talking about the thoughts you're having and the narratives you're telling yourself and the stories you're telling yourself in terms of that it is actually changing how you're feeling. All the people in a self-development space or self-help or self-improvement space, they're talking about the things you're telling yourself, the things that you're thinking about, the stories that you tell yourself, which is something that Seth Godin says, and or the narratives, which is kind of the exact same thing as a story that we are telling ourselves, which is or seems to be a pretty important thing and a pretty important part of either feeling bad or feeling good, no matter what you're just thinking about and looking at and whatnot. But the thing is, it truly is important, especially also because they say it, And by the way, because I haven't mentioned, this article is by Saul McLeod, or it is Sayr, R is A in German, Saulmcleod. And he's actually, just because I really wanted to look it up, because I do not really like it when I'm reading something scientific about just someone or by someone. It is definitely then not something that I deeply believe in then, and this just really kind of, I don't know, it is just not really good for a scientific kind of, it's not that scientific, but it is about science, and I do just want to have somebody that just knows what he's talking about or what she is talking about. And Mr. Saul is actually on a tutor at the Manchester University, or a teaching assistant, as you can see there, in the division of neuroscience and experimental psychology, the School of Health Sciences and or the division of neuroscience and experimental psychology, which just says that he just knows what he's talking about. I at least hope, and it's pretty nice what he's doing there, because he's actually giving us information for free, which is just really cool and really great. But let's move on. So, and there's now such a model, thoughts, feelings, and behavior, and they all just seem to be working together. Therefore, negative and unrealistic thoughts can cause us distress and result in problems. When a person suffers with psychological distress, the way in which they interpret situations becomes skewed, whatever, which in turn has a negative impact on the actions they take, which is something that definitely just makes sense, because if reality is something or somehow different for you, then you're also going to act differently. If somebody sees a threat, then obviously they are going to act differently. And when somebody does not see a threat or something that's dangerous or a predator or whatnot, they are just going to behave differently. They're going to act differently. They're going to do things differently. It does just make sense. And this is a really important point for me, that which in turn has a negative impact on the actions they take, because it definitely just changes our actions when we are seeing different things. CBT aims to help people become aware of when they make negative interpretations and of behavioral patterns which reinforce the distorted thinking. Cognitive therapy helps people to develop alternative ways of thinking and behaving, which aims to reduce their psychological distress. Cognitive behavioral therapy is, in fact, an umbrella term for many different therapies that share some common elements. Two of the earliest forms of cognitive behavioral therapy were rational emotive behavior therapy, which is REBT, developed by Albert Ellis in the 1950s, and cognitive therapy, developed by Aaron T. Beck in the 1960s. See Dobson and Block 1988 for a review of the historical basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. And now we're going to go through some general CBT assumptions, which is somehow not really kind of an explanation on how they work and how they are going to work, I guess, if I remember correctly. So let's see. The cognitive approach believes that abnormality stems from faulty cognitions about others, our world, and us. This faulty thinking may be through cognitive deficiencies, which is a lack of planning, or cognitive distortions, processing information inaccurately. And since we have been talking about cognitive distortions before as well, it is just pretty interesting to see some sort of a definition, because I've never ever seen a definition for it, which is now really amazing for me, which is processing information inaccurately. And I do really have to say that it is just really on point. This definition is on point, because it is indeed about processing things or processing basically their reality, I would say, but it might also be just in some different ways. But I'm referring to it as, okay, you're seeing something, but you're just seeing it in a different way, just because you're working differently mentally or in a wrong way mentally. And this then also leads to negative kind of actions and negative behavior, because you seem to just see the world in a different way as I'm seeing it, or as just healthy, quote unquote, people are seeing it. And it is just due to an inaccurate processing of information, which is then the real world. Like we see things and we process it in our mind, which are just only informations, and we process them inaccurately or just the wrong way or something. These cognitions cause distortions in the way we see things. Alice suggests it is through irrational thinking, while Beck proposed the cognitive triad, or triad, I don't know. We interact with the world through our mental presentation of it. If our mental representation are inaccurate, or our ways of reasoning are inadequate, then our emotions and behavior may become disordered, which just makes sense again. The cognitive therapist teaches clients how to identify distorted cognitions through a process of evaluation. The clients learn to discriminate between their own thoughts and reality. They learn the influence that cognition has on their feelings, and they are taught to recognize, observe, and monitor their own thoughts. And this is also one of the reasons why it then often involves homework, as they are saying in the next article, which might be like, okay, having a diary of how you're feeling, what your thoughts are, what you're dreaming about, and all those things, so that the therapist also has some ways to kind of engage with you or see that you're doing something. On the other hand as well, as I'm just thinking about it, but some other thing might actually be meeting with friends, if you're just somehow having some problems with socializing and those things. So it might also be just really be something that leads you out of your comfort zone, which is then probably pretty important, I guess. The idea is that the client identifies their own unhelpful beliefs and then proves them wrong. As a result, their beliefs begin to change. For example, someone who is anxious in social situations may be set a homework assignment to meet a friend at the pub for a drink. Yeah. Albert Ellis and REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, which is REBT, as I said, is a type of cognitive therapy first used by Albert Ellis, which focuses on resolving emotional and behavioral problems. The goal of the therapy is to change irrational beliefs to more rational ones. And I have to say that when I've read just rational emotive behavioral therapy, I thought maybe it's just always due to not thinking in a rational way, which might mean that you're not seeing the world as it is. The problem there is that, rational means logical, reasoned, well-reasoned, sensible, reasonable, cognate, coherent, intelligent, wise, judicious, and all those things. And can I have a translation, please? Yeah, thanks. I don't know. In general, it is really difficult. Also because I don't know who says that their way of seeing the world is actually the correct one or the right one or the real one. Who says that? Of course, I don't know, maybe therapists are able to kind of do that just because they are therapists and they have just studied and whatnot. But I don't know. Like, it's really complicated thing. It's really a complicated thing to just show people. I at least assume to show people that how they are seeing the world and how they are processing the information they are getting from the world or getting from the outside is just wrong or inaccurate or just not right. I guess it is actually, I don't know, and I do just really think that it is then really important, which is something that they actually are doing, that the client, him or herself, is seeing it themselves, and or that they are figuring it out themselves. You know, the thing is, if your therapist tells you that something is not right and you're seeing the world in a different way and it is an inaccurate way, yeah, okay, it is fine, but it doesn't really change something, I believe, because it is just only an outside force, and this might lead you to just seeing things differently, but it won't change anything unless you're actually doing something by yourself or from your inner game. I believe, at least. I really believe. By experience, and by what I've read, actually. So our EBT encourages a person to identify their general and irrational beliefs. For example, I must be perfect, and subsequently pursues the person challenge these false beliefs through reality testing. Okay. Albert Ellis proposes that each of us hold a unique set of assumptions about ourselves. I haven't actually read that one, which is fine, I guess. Assumptions about ourselves and our world that serve to guide us through life and determine our reactions to the various situations we encounter, which just makes sense. Unfortunately, some people's assumptions are largely irrational, guiding them to act and react in ways that are inappropriate and that prejudice their chances of happiness and success, which is fucked. Or preconceived idea, preconception, preconceived notion, prejudgment. You get it. Albert Ellis calls these basic irrational assumptions. Some people irrationally assume that they are failures if they are not loved by everyone they know. They constantly seek approval and repeatedly feel rejected. All their interactions are affected by this assumption, so that a great party can leave them dissatisfied because they don't get enough compliments. According to Ellis, these are other common irrational assumptions. So the first one was like just not being loved just because not everyone loves you. And now we're going through some other relatively common, as they at least say, assumptions. The idea that one should be thoroughly competent at everything. It's not going to work out. I'm not competent at everything. I'm just the worst speller there is. I can't spell for shit. It is really not something that I'm able to do, and it has never been the case. Since I'm actually a little child, I'm really fucking bad at spelling, whether it actually is in German or in English. I always thought that I would do a better job in English, but it actually is not the case. The idea that is it catastrophic when things are not the way you want them to be? Yeah, I'm also seeing that maybe even with myself as well. The idea that people have no control over their happiness, which is total bullshit. The idea that you need someone stronger than yourself to be dependent on. The idea that your past history greatly influences your present life. It does influence your life, but really not greatly. You can still change and choose who you are right now. We can choose that, which is just the beauty of life and the beauty of seeing things and seeing life as this or in this way. The idea that there is a perfect solution to human problems and it is a disaster if you don't find it. They're really common ones, like really, Alice believes that people often forcefully hold on to this illogical way of thinking and therefore employs highly emotive techniques to help them vigorously and forcefully change this irrational thinking. And I do just think if we should go through this, since it might be something that it is I guess we're going to go through this for quite a bit, but it is just worth it. I do just really believe that it is worth it, even though it might only be 2 episodes or something, you know. It might only be 2 to 3 episodes of CBT, you know. I am willing to stop it at this point in time just because I also want to go through some Quora questions, because this might also give you a lot of value, I at least hope, and also some news, because this is something new that I'm willing to try out and willing to see how it is working. And tomorrow we are actually going through the ABC model, which is one of his, so Albert Ellis models, on, I think, kind of explaining how I think CBD might be working or is working, and or how people are seeing the world. Because as you can see there, you know, just for the podcast listeners as well, the ABC model is A, activating events, B is belief, and C is the consequences. Which is like kind of a thing that is happening. So the activating event might be you're seeing, or something is happening, I guess, you know. Then you're believing something, and or your belief kicks in, and therefore you're doing something, which is then the consequence of believing something through that action or that event or whatever. But yeah, you know, let's actually see if we can find something on Quora, you know, some nice questions, some questions that we could just talk about. Answers. Some answers to the questions, or some questions to the answer. When should you give up versus trying harder? This is an amazingly good question, and it's still the same. It is really good question, since it is something that I've been talking about really often up to this point, and it is basically, so the idea that I'm going to share is from The Dip, which is a book by Seth Godin. And it is an amazing book. I think it is actually one of the best books, even though I haven't read the book. I've only read a summary, which kind of included the main thought and or the main kind of point, I guess. But it still was amazing. It really was amazing. I really liked it. The thing is, if you see that what you're doing is not going to lead to something that you would like to be, or if you're doing something, and this particular something, you know, whether it be just working, actually, just an example. If you're working on your business and you know that this business is not going to make you happy, and or if you're done doing what you're doing in 20 years, you know, just building your business, if you know that after you build your business, or after you've achieved what you're willing to achieve, when you then know that you're not going to be happy and that you do not like your life, then it is the exact same or the exact best point to quit. You know, because why would you do something that you know is not going to lead to a point that you would like, or that you will like, you know, or that you would enjoy, or that you would just that you would just like or love or enjoy or whatever. It wouldn't make any sense, you know. It wouldn't make any sense to pursue something that leads to something that you don't like to have. On the other hand, if the particular thing that you're trying to work on, and or that you're working on, and or that you're trying to achieve, if this particular thing is leading to a point in your life, or leading to a stage in your life that you like to have, or that you would like to have, then of course you should just really try harder. You should just really go for it, and you should go through the dip. The dip is like, I'm going to show you the dip, you know? I'm going to show you the dip. The dip is the point where you do just really have to work fucking hard. I'm sorry. Here you go. So here is the dip. This is the dip. On the left side, we're having results. So it is a graph, basically, for all the podcast listeners. On the left side, we have the graph. On the, was it vertical? No, it's the vertical kind of axis is results, and the horizontal one is effort. And at first, this kind of curve or the graph goes up a little bit, and then it drops. And then it goes up again, but just really exponentially and whatnot. And this point where there is a valley, where it's just really, really low, it is the dip. And the dip is just the point where you do just have to say whether you should be quitting or not. Because the dip is actually kind of the hardest point, or the most effort taking point, because if you actually go through it, and if you just go through the dip and work hard through it and whatnot, then you're going to rise. If it is actually something that you're willing to achieve, which is the point. And if it is something that you're not willing to achieve, then you should be doing something differently. But if it is something and you know it, that you want to go through or you want to get to, then please go through the dip. There might also be just... Okay. But there was some kind of an explanation. After a while, the reward versus effort is reduced, and this is the dip. If you push through when appropriate, it will eventually be highly rewarded. And highly rewarded is definitely some exponential fucking growth. And yeah, this is what the dip is. Let's actually see what Google News says. If there's something interesting for us. Yesterday we've actually had a look at the Pixel 4, something that I wasn't looking forward to it, since I wasn't actually waiting for it, since I wasn't actually kind of thinking about it coming and whatnot, but I'm really, really, really looking forward to what they're able to do, or what they were able to do with the camera and in general software things, because Google is just doing a really fucking great job at handling software and producing software for camera and whatnot. They're just really good at those algorithms, and those things. Like, it's just really fucking insane what they're able to just pull off here. Samsung admits major security flaw in Galaxy S10 under-screen fingerprint sensor, which is amazing. The latest Google shutdowns, Daydream VR, Google Clips. Yeah, I mean, Google tries out a lot of things, and we gotta have to appreciate the fact that they are trying out a lot of things. Of course, they're having to shut down quite a few things like Google Plus and Google Clips and Daydream VR and whatnot. But I guess it's fine, First of all, they are able to just cope with it. They're having enough money to just still run the business, no matter how many things they fail. Unless it is actually something that's significantly expensive, then of course it might not be a pretty good thing for them. But yeah, isn't there something interesting? Fortnite Chapter 2 is out, something that I seen yesterday as well. This video game company made one game for a decade. Now it is ready to make 5 more, which is actually Riot Games, because Riot Games, which is something that a colleague told me just before, when I was in the train and whatever. And he said that they're going to publish I think it was 2 new games. I don't know what they're talking about, 7 games. Let's actually have a look. But I think 2 new games. Then there's going to be just a mobile version of League of Legends. It's just insane what they're doing right now. And I just really love it. I really deeply love it that they're just trying to do something different. That they're just leading, that they're just going forward, that they're just showing the competition, okay, this is what we fucking do. LoL has been doing just really fucking great and is still doing really fucking great. I gotta have to say, there's nothing to debate about that, but it is just nice that they're also trying to do something else. It's just really, 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 really amazing. They are just working... No. Thank you. Yeah, they're working on something I'm showing you, something like a card game. Then there's a tactical shooter that I've seen just down there. I don't know if there's something about a tactical shooter like CSGO or the Counter-Strike series in general. Not abandoning its original game. Yeah, I hope that they're not doing that. And maybe even some skins and those things, but it is not really significant. But they are actually doing it for their, I think it's the 10th birthday of Riot Games, which is a reason, which is definitely a reason for putting out 7 new things. At least I'm not seeing, 7 new things, but I'm seeing 2 new games, which is this tactical kind of shooter thing, or my colleague was talking about something similar to Mortal Kombat. So just some fighting game, if I remember correctly at least, and this Hearthstone and or card game kind of thing, which is just a really good idea. Like, they're having the resources to do that, and they're also having the community, I guess, for those things, because the new game mode, which is something like chess, some sorta, like something more tactical, it is also doing relatively fine. As I've heard and I've seen and I've talked to people, and they said it's pretty cool. And I just liked it. I just really liked it. They're just trying out some new things, and they're just trying to, I don't know, to expand and trying to kind of maybe even diversify. Maybe they actually feared that League of Legends isn't going to be played in the future. Therefore, they are just trying to do something new. Could also be a thing. Who knows? But yeah. This is going to be the end of the episode, unfortunately, but I'm going to record another one afterwards as well, so it's not that bad for me, at least, and the other one is going to be uploaded, or this is actually the second one for today. I'm going to record the third one, which is going to be the second one or the first one of tomorrow, which is always nice, Then I'm not having to do so much, because I'm able to kind of pre-write the description and the thumbnail and whatnot, so it's pretty nice. But yeah. With that being said, I wish you the best health, happiness, and also success. And I also hope that you're going to remind yourself how you're going to be remembered, which means like your legacy and whatnot. And something that has to be said is that not everyone's going to like you, because we're more than 7 billion. Like, I do just have to look it up. Population world. Yeah, 7.7 billion. It's actually accurate. Didn't know that. As of April 2019. That's nice. And not everyone's going to like you just because you're so many people. There has to be someone. There really has to be someone. I'm not trying to be negative, but there has to be someone that dislikes you or even hates you. And some 3 questions that I hope that you're going to ask yourself as well is, or are, what are you trying to change? Why are you here? And what is bothering you the most? Those 3 questions are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even some business ideas. Since often has been the case that companies try to fix something that was bothering them and or pissed them off just immensely. And then they fix it, and they have not sold, but had a solution for this particular problem. And then suddenly they had a fucking company. Just because they were able to fix this problem. And most often, if there is a problem that is bothering you, then it is probably also going to bother somebody else, which is kind of the other side or the beauty of having 7.7 billion people on this planet. But yeah, thanks a lot, and I'll see you the next time.